what is a toxic relationship and how do you not label one particular reaction from a person as a red flag and completely discard them?
When we look for love, we don't look for safety. We look for what is familiar. So a lot of times we end up in toxic relationships and abusive relationships because those feel like home.
So red flag number 1, check.
Yeah.
So boyfriend number 1, breakup. 2, breakup. 3, breakup. 4, breakup. And then you enter a middle age of 35, 40 and you are absolutely alone and you're like, I'm not compatible with anyone.
In the evening, if I'm able to forgive myself for the mistake, then it's not guilt, right? Because guilt will say, oh my God, I am such a loser. When you're ready to be vulnerable, it becomes 10 times easier for the person in front of you to become vulnerable.
When you're being kind to yourself, there is also a risk of toxic positivity.
So if we move out of our comfort zone too far, we panic. What we don't realize is that we don't need to move completely out of our comfort zone. We can just stretch a little bit. People think that routines are boring. And if you have a routine, you have to be disciplined. And to be disciplined, you can't have any free time to do whatever you want. But you will be surprised at the amount of free time you have and the energy you have when you actually have a routine. And science says that 3 to 4 cycles of will actually relieve your mind and relieve your stress. And it's the fastest, most efficient way to do it.
Welcome to the Journey Within podcast with me, Shobha Rana. This is a podcast where we try to deep dive into the personal growth journeys of our guests, their journeys of self-discovery, and ultimately transforming themselves and their perspective. We try to understand the connection between our inner world, where the processing of our emotions happens, and the outer world, where we live our life with our experiences, with people, with our aspirations, goals, and everything else. Today, joining us on this podcast is founder of Get Me Therapy, Princy Saini. Through her platform, she is trying to help people understand the concept of therapy and also normalize the conversations about mental health and our emotional wealth. So let's meet her and deep dive into understanding our own mental and emotional health. Please welcome Princy Saini to the Journey Within podcast. Hi Princy, how are you?
Hi Shobha, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great as well. Princy, seeing your presence, you have such a divine presence, and your page, Get Me Therapy, is helping so many people to understand the concept of therapy, to also get therapy and counseling, and to revive their mental health and also emotional health in certain areas. So, Princy, I want to talk about your personal journey, your personal story, because you know what happens when you take up a subject as beautiful as psychology, as intriguing as psychology, there is something that has kind of signaled you in that direction. So what was that for you?
I was very young. I was in 6th grade when I got my first panic attack. And I remember feeling very differently. All the other kids were feeling differently and I was feeling this breathlessness and I could not remember what I was reading. And these panic attacks kept happening year over year and I knew something was different with me. And even then I knew that nothing was wrong, that somebody needed to tell me what was happening. And whenever my parents took me to a doctor, it got misdiagnosed. For example, once we went to an emergency, my parents rushed me to an emergency and the doctor said I had exam phobia. And I knew in my heart that was not true. So I started reading everything that I can on psychology.
When you were just in 6th grade?
I was just in 6th grade.
That is like a 11, 12-year-old kid.
Yes,
at that point.
I was very young. And that even on the first day that I got my panic attack, my cousin sister was home. She's 10 years older than me. And she understood that I was going through something difficult. She helped me soothe myself, calm myself. I had an exam the next day. She taught me everything because I could not retain anything. And I learned then that support and understanding and empathy is so important for people who are going through anything related to mental health, that I knew that I needed some more support. And because my family was not so educated and there's such taboo around mental health, they could not take me to a psychologist, even though I repeatedly told them, because these were happening starting from 6th class, these were happening till my 12th class and even in my college. And they never took me to a psychologist because so much taboo around, you could be crazy and you're not crazy and you're not a weak person, you're a strong person. So I learned everything I could about mental health, what was going on with me, what was going on with so many other people. There is anxiety, depression, panic disorders, panic attacks, trauma, and stuff like that. And I knew that I could be a person who can understand what a person is going through and understand the kind of support that they need. And
Because
so,
you had gone through it firsthand.
exactly.
At a very early age. So
Yes.
you knew that there was something wrong. There is an interpretation that you are making which is sort of going against you
Right.
of the things, but
Right.
a support system, a nurturing hand coming your way
Yeah.
is helping you soothe yourself and
Correct.
helping you also recover from wherever you have gone at that point.
Right. And when I got my first job, I knew that now I have the paying propensity to get a psychologist, right? So I did my master's in economics and I was a consultant at a bank. And because that gave me the ability to get a psychologist
For
af-
yourself.
for myself.
So you
Yeah, I went into therapy first.
you
right?
facilitated your own therapy
Exactly.
first. Okay.
And then just a few sessions after my therapy, my life completely changed, Shobha.
Take me through how a panic attack feels, because panic attacks also has different what I should say, intensity for different people.
Yes.
And the symptoms are also different for different people. So how was it for you?
So for me, a panic attack felt like I am feeling breathless, like I can't take a full breath. And yet there is a heavy, heavy blanket all over me. The world has turned completely yellow. If I'm reading something, I cannot retain that information. And after 30 seconds, I will have this very extreme impulse to cry. So whenever I had these panic attacks, my world would go completely yellow. There would be this ringing, blurred sense that I can't hear things that are going on. And my vision would completely shift and I would start crying within 30 seconds to 1 minute. There was these pangs of crying. And I knew that that was something completely different, right? So I told my therapist about
This
it.
was not a regular sense of panic or sadness
No.
or crying.
Because I knew that this goes away in 30 seconds or 1 minute, right? And this is something that comes only for 30 seconds, but then it leaves me completely exhausted. I don't have the energy to do anything more.
Did you fear
in the
having
day.
these panic attacks
A
also?
lot. That fear drove my days, my ability to do stuff, my ability to go up on stage, my ability to go and write an exam. That is why I probably had a lot of test anxiety also, because I was constantly in fear that I will have a panic attack in the middle of my exam, or I will have a panic attack in the middle of the preparation of my exams, which will leave me completely memoryless. And I will not be able to remember anything for my exam.
Brain fogging is a very
It's a very common thing
symptom
that happens to a
yeah.
person who's going through the panic attack. So it
Nowadays we're living amidst so much of noise that brain fogging has as such become a phenomena for a lot of people who are not even having panic attacks.
Yeah.
So intensity only multiplies once you go through a mental health condition.
Right. And then I told my therapist about these panic attacks. I told her that I was not doing well at my job. I was starting to have these panic attacks again during my job. They had stopped for 2 years, but then they started again during my job. And
Did you felt like a deep sense of physical pain also with your panic attacks?
No, there was never a sense of pain, but there was always a heavy chest.
I very recently felt like a blow in my chest.
Oh yes.
Kind of a pain, like in a
Yeah.
very particular place. There's such an intense blow.
Like a stabbing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a stabbing sort of a thing happening, and it just stayed with me for a lot of days, like for 3 weeks or so. I just kept feeling it, and the more I would think about it, I went into a deadlock situation.
Ah.
The more I thought about it, the more intensified it would get, and there came a point I couldn't understand whether it's a mental thought level manifestation that is happening, or is there's actually a very intense physical pain.
Right.
The brain fogging again started to happen. So yeah,
Right.
this is a very recent thing which I found out about myself. So I haven't had as many panic attacks, or my mental health related episodes have not been. I have been very sad. I have been very situations of hopelessness, rock bottoms, all of that I have also experienced. But intense panic attacks and all of these things I had not
Yeah.
experienced fully. Like they were in part and parcels, but not like a very physical manifestation of it, which has
Right.
stayed with you for a longer period. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying?
So there are a lot of your mental health can translate a lot into what you're feeling in your body, right? Those are called somatic experiences, and um, a lot of people who feel, for example, if you're very stressed, there will be a lot of pain in your neck. And your back can hold a lot of your stress, because as soon as your stress response is activated, your hip muscle basically tenses. And even when the stress goes away, it does not necessarily untense, right? It does not let go of the stress. So you have to recognize that your back pain might not just be physical, it might be due to something such as stress. And there is the pain in the jaw for a lot of people. There is constant headaches for a lot of people that also translate into migraine, right?
Stiffness in the joints.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of diseases like cardiac problems, your reduced immunity, and digestive problems, you will always, there is a direct line from your stomach to your mental health, right? So as soon as your mental health goes awry and you have a lot of stress or anxiety or any other problem, you will realize that your stomach is not behaving in the way that it's supposed to. Either there will be appetite changes, or there will be diarrhea or constipation, and they are absolutely completely connected. So we need to listen to a body in terms of what it's saying, and also diagnose it properly, and not sort of
Online diagnosis,
not
self-diagnosis.
online diagnosis at all.
The self-diagnosis part is pretty dangerous. Like you said that in sixth grade, you started feeling these panic attacks and you also wanted to see a psychologist, but because of whatever reasons you didn't. So you also started reading. So usually people start there. They just want to
Yeah.
understand their condition better.
Yeah.
But that somewhere becomes a process of putting yourself under the radar and then getting worried and panicked about symptoms that you have, because more or less mental health diseases will have certain common symptoms. So if you have mental health disorder, the direct gut related issues you will have. So even if you have a constipation because of, let's say, it's not as dangerous a condition, a mental, it's not yet a disorder, but it's
Right.
just a basic symptom emerging, you start correlating the two
Yes.
things. I think self-diagnosis in particular is pretty dangerous. One can start at understanding the concepts better, but
Absolutely.
there has to be a lot of nuanced knowledge for you to understand where the relation between my, let's say, one physical symptom and the disorder is.
Right.
So that is also one thing.
So when it comes to mental health, because there is not a lot of awareness, not a lot of information, what happens is, one, you're either in the state of complete dark, right? You don't know what's happening to you, you don't know what's happening to your mind or your body, and you keep living on with the symptoms, thinking that life is pain and this is how I'm supposed to continue. The second thing is, the opposite of that is, you either read a lot about it and you diagnose yourself and you start treating yourself for the condition that you have diagnosed yourself with. I think what we miss a lot is that your self diagnosis does not help, but what you've read about yourself gives you a signal that now is the time to meet a medical professional or a mental health professional or see a doctor. For example, you read that the problems that you're having in your stomach or the headache that you're constantly having could be because of constant stress that you're facing or a lot of anxiety. That should not tell you that I have anxiety. That should tell you I need to go and see a psychologist.
And see if it is anxiety.
Exactly. It is a good starting point for you to understand when to see a psychologist or a professional, not to conclude that you have a mental health disorder.
When you self-diagnose yourself, once you see certain irregularities with your physical body, the pain or the symptoms that you see, certain sort of diagnosis, if it is leading you to better movement, better sleep, bettering your nutrition and all of that, it's still a good thing. But if it is leading you to do certain activities which should be done only under supervision, and you're doing it because you have diagnosed yourself, it could be pretty detrimental to you.
Absolutely. It's always better to go and see a professional, because it also leads to a lot of fear in your mind about who I am as a person. Am I a weak person for having these disorders? Because there is so much stigma and taboo for having a mental health disorder that if you label yourself and tag yourself as one, you start thinking or assuming that it makes you weak in some way. And if you actually visit a psychologist or a professional, they will let you know, one, either you don't have it, and second, if you do, it's completely okay. It's a part of being human. So instead of thinking that you've diagnosed yourself and keeping mulling over it and overthinking and overstressing about it, if you just conclude it as going to a doctor and just another one
Basically
of those
normalizing this conversation about mental health.
Yeah.
A lot of strides are already happening in that direction, and thankfully so, and it's becoming less of a taboo now, and people are becoming more and more aware. But yet, having said so, there's a lot of work that is still pending to be done in
Yeah.
that space. And I'm really happy that people like you, and there's so many other people who are taking up this cause and helping people feel better,
Yeah.
heal from deep within and feel better. Stress is also one of the major causes for a lot of mental health or psychological or psychosomatic disorders.
Right.
So let's try to decode stress in today's episode. So first of all, what is stress?
I feel like stress is widely misunderstood for good reason, but I'll tell you why. It's because life will place demands on you. You will have deadlines, you will have problems in your relationships, you will have to study for exams, you will have other career related problems, you will have health problems. And all of these are demands that life situations put on you. And now there are mechanisms in your body that need to prepare you to face those demands, right? And that is exactly what stress is. It's your body's response to prepare you and your body and your brain to face all these demands head on, right? For example, if you have to meet a deadline, you know that end moment thing that you do, in 2 hours you're able to finish the entire presentation. That happens because your body has primed itself to do that. Your brain is completely focused, you are able to concentrate, because your body has taken away resources from certain areas like your digestive system, your immunity, and it has given all of those resources to the areas that you actually require, for example.
That you want to activate more because you want to be done in 2 hours.
Exactly. And that happens because you have a deadline, right?
Stress is basically heightened response for these deadlines or
Exactly.
the situations which are high demands,
Yeah.
which demands highly of you.
Exactly. And now, because you had stress, you were able to meet that deadline. If you did not have stress, you would have felt like, oh, I still have more time, so why should I do it? If you feel like I have to go and do this because of the stress, right? So stress is good, but the problem starts occurring when you are in that heightened state of stress response for a long time, right? It's your sympathetic nervous system is basically working to push adrenaline into your body and take resources away from unnecessary events.
Or lesser important activities at that
Yes.
point, which could be your digestion.
Yes, exactly.
Which could be your...
so less important, less significant processes in your body right now, and it starts to give it to the important, significant areas in that particular moment. So your sympathetic nervous system is making you more alert. Whereas your parasympathetic nervous system basically tells your body that now it's time to relax, right? So when your sympathetic nervous system is activated for a long time, there's a lot of cortisol running in your bloodstream, right? There are a lot of neurochemicals that have been like adrenaline, which is epinephrine and neonephrine, and they keep running in your body and making you feel like you're stressed all the time, right? And they're putting a lot of pressure on the processes of your body. When that constantly keeps happening, it puts you at a risk for a lot of things. For example, there's diabetes and there's cardiac problems, like we all know.
To understand the concept of stress mentally, if we can simplify it to, let's say, physical stress. So you can do a heightened or a high performance activity for a certain time. Let's say you go to gym and you lift weights, you can do that for an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours. You can't be lifting weights through the day.
Absolutely.
If you keep doing that, what will happen to your body? It's as simple as that. So if you're lifting that same mental weight through the day, then the similar impact is happening to your mental health.
That's absolutely completely correct, right? So that is what also leads to burnout, right? We talk about burnout all the time, and that happens because we are in this activated state and we have a lot of stress, and that stress response is activated for a long period of time, right? So what we need to learn to do is to to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, which tells the body that now you can relax, right? And we can do that through a lot of ways.
Before we deep dive into how to take charge of these nervous systems and how to make them work for us, let's understand these two nervous systems very deeply. So one is your sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for your heightened activity performance.
Yes.
Then one is your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for your relaxation and recovery activities in your body, which could be your digestion system, sleep system, and all of that.
Yes.
Whereas sympathetic nervous system is preparing you for an activity. It's your flight or fight response.
Yes.
So these are the two systems that we're talking about.
Right.
So in the situation of stress or pressure on you, your sympathetic nervous system automatically is working much more.
Exactly.
It's taking away from the other resources. Hence, your
Yes.
parasympathetic activities are going down.
For example, what happens in fight or flight, right? For example, when we were surviving as humans, right, we had to fight to save ourselves, right? So as soon as your body thinks that there's a threat or a danger, what it does is it rushes blood from other parts of your body to your limbs, to your arms, to your feet. To do what? So that you can either run
or hit.
or you can hit, right? And then it also sends a lot of blood to your heart so that it can pump faster. It sends blood to your brain so that it can focus on the threat in front of you, right? So all of these things it also does now when it thinks you're in threat or danger. But now the threat or danger is very different from what it used to be.
It's not a physical stress as much as it
Right.
is a mental stress.
Exactly. So now, because your mind perceives a situation as stressful, as a threat or a danger, your body activates your response of fight or flight. And that basically means that you are taking resources away from various organs and your processes and giving it to certain places that you
But
think
those
is important.
organs from where you are right now taking away the resources, you have to supply them back so
Exactly.
that those systems can also work efficiently, because those are the systems which are responsible for the proper nourishment of your body, proper recovery of your body from all of the heightened activity that you have performed for a few hours or a few minutes. So this parasympathetic nervous system activation is also very important,
Yes.
because this will help you to bounce back again and deal with something else in your life.
Yes.
So how does one activate the parasympathetic nervous system?
High stress is associated with a higher heart rate, right? Your heart beats faster when you're very stressed. Now, there's a connection between your mind and your body. When you're stressed, your heart beats faster. And when you're relaxed, your heart beats slower. Now, this road is also two-way, right? So you can use your body to change how you're feeling in your mind, right? So if your heart is beating fast because you're very stressed, what you have to do is you have to make it beat slower. If you make it beat slower, your mind will get the signal, oh, we are fine, there's no threat or danger, so we can relax. And how do you make your heart beat faster or slower? The easiest way to do it is through your breath. So when you inhale, your heart beats fast. And when you exhale, your heart beats slower. So basically, to slow down your heart, you have to make your exhales longer than your inhales.
There is this concept of your exhale being twice as longer as your
Exactly.
inhalation. And that is a very surefire recommendation that comes from a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists,
Yes.
medical professionals for someone who is undergoing stress.
Absolutely.
First thing that they say is that just stop everything else and breathe deeply.
Yeah.
And there's so much rooted in the science, like you're saying, and it is also coming in from our ancient texts. Those have prioritized your breath work so highly that physical activity is in fact secondary. Your breath work and your meditation and your mind health is more important than probably your other areas of life. In a lot of ways, that makes so much sense also, because your mind is somewhere governing how you're seeing your life, how you're perceiving your life, and then what actions you're taking in your day-on-day life.
Yes.
Right. So it's a beautiful technique to balance your sympathetic and parasympathetic systems to activate the one that is sort of needed to help you relax and recover.
Yeah. So science, basically neuroscience has proved that there is this exercise called the physiological sigh, which is the fastest method so far to release stress in the moment, right? Because you need to take care of the short term stress and then there is a long term stress. So, to release the short term stress, for example, right now I'm feeling really tense, what I can do is just do the physiological sigh in which I'll inhale and then I'll fill my lungs and then I'll do a small inhale and then I'll exhale till my lungs are empty really slowly. And then I'll exhale fast, inhale fast, and then do it again, and then slowly exhale till my lungs are empty. And science says that 3 to 4 cycles of this will actually relieve your mind and relieve your stress, and it's the fastest, most efficient way to do it.
I recently was at Sadhguru's Coimbatore center, and they were teaching us Shambhavi Kriya. And that Kriya involves this breathing practice, wherein you are inhaling faster and then fast,
Yeah.
and then you're exhaling.
Right.
So, yeah, I know what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, that a lot of these practices are now getting backed up by the science, but
Absolutely.
they have existed forever.
long
Like as
time.
human beings, we have known these things to calm ourselves down. To these terminologies could be now coming into existence. These could be 100, 200, 250, 300 years old. But this bioscience that we understand as a human being, that our body, our being understands, is coming from a very long, very ancient history. It has a very long background, so to speak, right?
Absolutely, I completely agree. And that is part of the reason why, at least in India, we have such a high focus on breathing exercises and yoga, which is called moving meditation, right? That it's existed for so long that we take it for so granted, right? We have people telling us to do breathing exercises, and that is right there in front of us to do every day. Our parents tell us to do it every day, but we've never thought to given it another chance, right? In fact, as a psychologist, I have to convince people that when I'm telling you to do your breathing exercises, it's not a gimmick. It will actually help you. Yoga will actually help you. And how meditation helps you with stress scientifically is that when you're stressed, what's happening is that when your mind thinks that there is some danger or a threat, it's activating your stress response, right? Now you need to put a little space between activating your stress response and thinking that there is a threat, right? So what meditation does and mindfulness exercises do is that you empower or you work on that muscle of your brain, which can look at your thoughts in a rational manner, right? You don't suppress thoughts, you don't push them away. You look at them and you let them go. For example, right now I think that I have a deadline and I need to work for it, or this will happen, that will happen. All this subconscious thought or these thoughts in my mind will make me believe that there is a threat and there will be a stress response activation and I'll start feeling really stressed or anxious and I will not be able to calm myself down. But if I do a mindfulness activity every day or I meditate every day, what happens is that I'm focusing on my thoughts every day. And what I'm practicing is that a thought is coming, I pay attention to it, and then I let it go. I label it as just a thought, not a fact.
Basically, engaging with all of your thoughts is not important.
Exactly.
That is what, being a yoga teacher myself, a practitioner for nearly 8 years, is something that I have also trained myself. And it really works exactly the way you are saying. This everyday meditation sort of prepares you to look at your thoughts as just one thing which is existing and it's flowing. You don't have to stop them somewhere and engage with it. Let's say a thought has come that I will meet with an accident today. Now, it's a very negative thought. Now, if you start engaging with it and if you start communicating, how will I get out of the house? How will I cross the road? Then I have to do this. Then I have to. You start preparing extra for that to sort of rationalize that thought. So this rationalization of an irrational thought is a exhausting activity for no reason.
Absolutely.
So if a thought like that has come in that whatever negative or positive, mostly we engage with the negative thoughts. Very seldom it happens that there are very positive thoughts coming in and you're engaging with them and it is stressing you out. It doesn't stress you out, please, even if you engage with them. It kind of uplifts your mood. What kind of puts you down is engaging with these thoughts which are not in your favor.
Right.
So this engagement needs to be broken.
Absolutely.
Many times people ask me that how do I silence my mind? How do I come and get into the state of nothingness? Now, which is of course a dream state, where you are just one with the higher consciousness, and everything in between has become so transient that it is non-existent. But it's a very it's a dreamlike state, and I don't know how many of us will go to that state.
I think it starts with just a simple concept that a thought is just a thought. It's not a fact, right? And you just let a thought come and you let a thought go.
From stress and thoughts and the correlation between the two, I also want to come on to the next layer, which is the emotional layer. Now, there are certain emotions that we have labeled as negative. I personally feel that there are no emotions which are negative or positive, because every emotion exists for you to play a certain role. I think the regulation of emotions is important, but there are certain generic, let's say emotions. When I say shame or embarrassment, guilt or regret or grief, these are some hardcore negative emotions. Now, I want to understand the thin line that exists between shame and embarrassment from you, because these sound as the same, but they're not the same.
Right.
So what is the difference between shame and embarrassment?
So first of all, there are no negative emotions. All emotions are just emotions, right? We need to be able to accept that we feel a certain way, and it's not negative or positive. It's a part of being human, right? So we talk about shame, we talk about embarrassment. There's a difference between being embarrassed and shame, right? Embarrassment mostly happens in front of people, right? If we were, I stumbled a little bit and people saw me, or, I spilled some water and I think that, people will judge me, I will feel embarrassed, right? But shame is much more deeper and personal. It might not just happen in front of people. Shame might also be when I'm sitting alone in a room, right? Similarly with regret and guilt, right?
The way you have explained shame is so beautiful, and if you deeply reflect upon it, it is actually a very inside out kind of an emotion, not the other way around. Whereas
Right.
embarrassment is an outside in kind of an experience. So understanding that whether it's inside out or outside in emotion, for me, that also simplifies what you can do about it.
Correct.
If it is an outside in emotion wherein your external factors are dictating what you're feeling emotionally, then there are two things that you can do. Either you can change your external factors if there is that possibility, or you can make peace with it if it cannot be changed, right? But if it's an inside out thing, then you have to see the emotional processing, the internal perspective shift is something that we have to work on.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that is about shame and embarrassment, but we're also talking about regret and guilt.
Yeah.
So tell me the correlation between the two emotions,
So-
or if there isn't any.
So regret and guilt can be, a lot of people can feel that they're the same thing, right? But regret is basically when you say that I think that I should not have done this thing, and if I got the chance, I would probably choose a different path, right? But guilt is not being able to forgive yourself for certain mistakes and thinking that you are a bad person, or you are inadequate, or not good enough. And blaming your character for the mistakes is guilt, right? And a very important part of getting over guilt is basically, one, forgiving yourself, is being kind on yourself. And second is action, is basically, if you think that you've made a mistake and if you think that you need to be better, taking action towards being better and towards undoing, or not undoing, but taking action towards taking better decisions in the future will help you absolve a lot of your guilt. And then there comes the self-acceptance and compassion, which helps you forgiving yourself. And that guilt sits with you. If you inherently think that you're a bad person, that guilt will sit with you. For example, a very, very small example of guilt is a person who was raised in a household where if they did not study, they were told कि तुम गंदे बच्चे हो. And now whenever they're not working enough and they're not studying enough, even when they don't need to do enough, their internal voice says that I'm a bad person, that there's an inherent flaw in my character. And so instead of feeling like I will make it better the next day, what I do is I feel deep guilt. For what? For not studying enough in the day. That is not something that you should feel guilt for. Maybe you can regret not studying enough and make it better the next day, but feeling like I'm a bad person and attacking your character, that is that is not helpful for your mental health.
So it's very important to understand the difference between regret and guilt.
Yeah.
Sometimes what we do is, and in fact most times what we do is, we equate the two emotions. We get confused with the language, but we don't understand the underlying feelings behind those emotions,
Right.
and which are very deep seated. Like regret, you said, one can feel it and one can rectify it. And
Yeah.
similar thing can be done with the guilt, but guilt is a more deeper emotion than regret. And regret you feel for a very few things. I feel there are very few things where you will feel regret, but guilt is an everyday thing. Like if you have eaten a little extra, you are guilty. If you have not done something that you were supposed to do today, you are guilty. So guilt is coming in every space.
If you're able to forgive yourself and you've accepted that you made that decision and now nothing can be done about it, that's regret. Right? So if I ate cheesecake in the morning and I had told myself that I will not eat any sugar, and I ate cheesecake in the morning. In the evening, if I'm able to forgive myself for the mistake, then it's not guilt. Right? Because guilt will say, oh my God, I am such a loser. Right? And so it's okay to regret that I ate the cheesecake.
Yeah.
But feeling guilt is just attacking your own character.
And I feel regret doesn't stay with you all the time. But guilt sort of becomes a part of who you are.
Right.
If you let it sit for deep enough, long enough, it becomes a part of who you are. Because regret, if we look back upon our own lives also, we would have regretted a few decisions of our life. Let's say a couple of those, 3-4 of those decisions. And that also, when you know you can't do anything about them, you can transform your relationship with that decision, and you can then move on to the next thing that you can do to better it from next time onwards, right? But guilt becomes a part of you.
Right.
That's why there are guilt related disorders. So how does one come out of guilt?
You build certain self-compassion and self-acceptance. The easiest way you can do it is that imagine a person who is a coach or who is a parent or someone that you really, really admire. You can just imagine that person in your head, someone who you really admire and you'll always listen to. And that person has to be really empathetic and caring and giving. If there is no person such as that, just make one up, right? In your head. And then imagine the person that you deeply care about. You care about unconditionally and you love them a lot, right?
Even when you know their flaws.
Exactly. And now, imagine that person has made the same mistake that you have, right? The way that you will talk to them, have that coach talk to you, right? So you have to imagine that a friend has made a mistake, right? And that friend you deeply care about, deeply love. It can also be a partner, it can also be a parent or a sibling. And you have to be able to tell them that it's okay. It's okay. You're just human. And then the coach that you imagined, or the parent that you imagined, or someone that you really care about, someone who has influence over you, have them say the same thing to you. You can imagine them saying the same thing to you. And when that becomes a language in your own head, you do it again and again. Your thoughts and beliefs of whenever you make a mistake, the first thought was you're a loser. The first thought will eventually become it's okay. You'll not do it again. You can trust yourself.
Yeah, I feel the kindness that we extend to others, if we can project it on our own selves,
Absolutely.
our lives would become much more beautiful.
Yeah.
We will heal also from deep within. I feel it's very easy for us to be kind to others than to our own selves. But there's another side to this coin. When you're being kind to yourself, there is also a risk of toxic positivity. It's okay, it will get better, this too shall pass. After a point, it starts becoming toxic. Right? What are your thoughts about toxic positivity?
Toxic positivity is basically when you are trying to be positive without processing any situation. For example, good vibes, just think positive. Oh, why are you thinking negative? Just think positive thoughts, everything will become okay.
Now, this good vibes only is, it just
Very-
gets to me. It
it gets
irks
to
me
me.
so much.
I mean, when a person says that, I'm not doing well, oh, you'll be okay. If only someone calmed down when you told them to calm down,
World would be a
never
different
helps.
place.
It never helps. So I think toxic positivity is basically when you're imposing your idea of what works, and you're trying to impose the idea on a person that when emotions come up that don't sit well with you, you just suppress them and you replace them with positive ones. But that never helps. The only way emotions go away, or emotions, you feel better about an emotion that was not making you feel better, is by processing it, is by letting it run through your body and your mind and acknowledging that this was an emotion, it will pass, and I'll be okay. And that is when the positivity that takes origin from your own self, your own mind comes into place. You can't just say ki, oh, suppress an emotion and replace it with a positive. So anything that's toxic will stop your growth. Whenever you want to find out whether it's positivity or toxic positivity, just answer the question, is it helping me grow?
Yeah, it will not align with your higher self or your
Yeah.
better version. For the lack of a better
Exactly.
word, I'm saying better version. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it will not help. So toxic positivity needs to be very well understood, because we do this toxic positivity self-talk also. It's not just externally projected to a
Yeah.
friend or to somebody else. It is also a self-talk also that you do, like something, if you are being ignorant of certain actions that you were supposed to take, if you're not doing certain things that you were supposed to do, you just tell yourself it's okay, I can afford to miss it, or it's fine, or oh, I don't let it affect my mental state. But actually what you're doing is you are building that air in that balloon even more and more and more and more, right? So yeah, so that needs
I
to
think
be
it
very
that
well
I
understood.
think that also comes from the fact that a lot of people have problems facing a problem because they feel that it makes them feel a certain way that's not comfortable. So, for example, I might have to do a task that is really challenging, or something that I'm really afraid to fail at, right? So, that emotion is really uncomfortable. And to suppress that emotion, I will try to avoid the task altogether. And by avoiding it, and to avoid it, I will tell myself that it's okay, I don't need to do it, or I'll give myself some other version of the excuse. But it's basically avoiding the thing that you fear or it makes you uncomfortable, without realizing that the thing that's making you uncomfortable, if you just stretch a little bit and do an inch of it, it will give you the motivation and the strength to do even more. We think that we are not good enough and we sit in our comfort zone. Then after the comfort zone is the stretch zone. And then after that is panic. So if we move out of our comfort zone too far, we panic. What we don't realize is that we don't need to move completely out of our comfort zone. We can just stretch a little bit, right? So for example, right now I feel inadequate that I can't run, right? I can't run a 5K, right? I don't need to run 5 kilometers to prove to myself that I'm adequate. You will feel very adequate if you just go and run 500 meters. Your comfort zone was running 0 kilometers. Your stretch zone
It's 500 meters.
is running 500 meters, just half a kilometer. And you will feel very adequate, very confident to tomorrow maybe run 1 kilometer. Or maybe in a month run 1 kilometer. And then later on that stretch, your comfort zone will keep becoming
Expand.
bigger and bigger and bigger, and that will increase your feelings of adequacy and increase your self-esteem.
This expansion of your comfort zone is such an interesting concept because it also helps you understand your tolerance for various things in life.
Yeah.
So earlier you had, let's say, this much of tolerance for things happening in your life, but if you stretch yourself a little bit and for the right reasons that have to be personally right to you. I mean, I think there is no absolute concept of right or wrong in this world.
Yeah.
It could mean very different thing. It's very subjective. So whatever you feel is right for you, if you can just stretch yourself a little bit, then your threshold and tolerance also increases, and you build onto it, and then you build that resilience and strength for certain situations in your life that you like.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next dimension of our mental health and our emotional health. Something that impacts it a lot is our also relationships.
Right.
Your relationship influence how you feel mentally, emotionally, and your mental and emotional health also influence the kind of relationships you have in your life. So it's
Yeah.
very important to talk about this segment.
Right.
Right. As much as I want to understand this deeply with you, first I want to start with your personal story, because you're getting married in December.
Yes.
And I can see that glow on your face.
Thank you.
So tell me something more about relationships, not from a psychologist perspective right now, but just from Princy's perspective.
I'll tell you very personally, I grew up in a full household. And when I say full, our house was never my mother, father, my brother, and I. It was always my relatives, my mama, my other siblings, we spending our summers at our mama's place, someone always staying at our place, and I love it that way. And even when the relatives were not there, we were so close to our neighbors that my mother was working, so the neighbors used to take care of me and my brother, and we all used to play in the same place. Everybody, like, it was a village. It takes a village to bring up a child, they say, right? And I've seen that village, and I've always wanted a life like that because I see the importance of it, not just in terms of happiness, but general satisfaction and fulfillment and belonging in life. Right? Feeling happy and joy is one emotion. You feel elated, you feel happy. But there is a sense of belonging and fulfillment and feeling like even if I'm not happy, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And that comes from people who you care about and the people who care about you, and being a part of a community. And that is something that I have grown up with and I love. And something that I don't like these days is the fact that we live in societies and these apartments and we don't know our neighbors. We might know them, but we don't know them deeply. They're not our friends. And that is something that deeply affects me, you know.
I feel somewhere the disconnectedness with our relationships and communities, which is a mistake that I have also made. I have been a very aloof person, in my growing days. Because I had certain ambition and I needed to put in a lot of time there. So I didn't have time for a lot of other things, which only I've understood in the last few years that building on healthy relationships and a good community around yourself is so important, and you just expect things to fall in place for you. But if you cannot be that person for somebody else, nobody else will be that person for you. So
Yeah.
it all boils down to you bettering yourself, and that includes you bettering yourself in terms of your mental health and emotional health also, because then only you can build this positive circle around you. When you talk about relationships, one of the relationship that influences most of our lives and our mental health is also relationship with our parents, where we come from, and second, our partners, where we sort of go to.
Yeah.
Right? These two
Sibling relationships are also really important.
They're also really important, but I feel in some ways it is easier for people to disconnect with their siblings and, still have their life going on full-fledged than with their parents and their partners.
But there is science actually says this. Relationship with siblings are really underrated in the terms that you and your relationship with your parents, the only other person that will be able to relate with that experience is your sibling. Nobody else. The way that you grew up, the experiences that you had, your bringing up, whatever you went through, nobody else.
I completely agree.
Your partner will never understand. Your friends will never understand.
Your parents will also don't understand.
Your parents will never understand.
Yeah.
The only other person to understand is your sibling, and it dictates a lot of your life satisfaction and belonging, the sense of belonging and happiness. So it's a really foregone sort of resource that we don't use
understand
and utilize.
Yeah. I was trying to not bring it up so much also, because these days people are usually having just one kid.
Hmm.
So that sibling relationship is kind of not known to a lot of people also, but this parents and partner relationship, and a lot of your trauma, your personal dissatisfaction, unfulfillment, feeling inadequate, feeling judged, judging others, all of that is stemming in these two areas of your life deeply. That is affecting your mental peace every day.
Yeah.
So how does one sort this out or create a balance in their relationship? Let's say first talk about parents. What is it that you acquire from your parents other than your genes and the way you look and the other inheritance that you get? But there's also a lot of difficult emotions and trauma that trickles down to you. So let's talk about that also.
Everything that you learn about your mental health and how to feel about your thoughts, how to judge yourself, your self-esteem, to regulate yourself when you're sad, to tell yourself that it's okay to feel sad, to be resilient, to bounce back from your failures, you learn from your parents. Your primary caregiver is the most important person in your development from childhood to your early development years, right? For example, when a child cries and a mother is there to hold the child and soothe the child, the signal that the child gets is that I'm feeling sad right now, I am frustrated right now, but I'll be okay, right? Whereas if a child that cries a lot and they are not getting consistent care from their primary caregiver, that child learns to believe that I am frustrated and no one will ever be here to help me and the world is not a safe place.
So
Right?
their attitude of going in the world will be way different than the former
Exactly.
child.
So the former child will enter into the world thinking that, oh, I can trust people. The world is a safe place. And the catch here is the world will always give you what you expect of it. So the
Law of
child
attraction.
that thinks that the world is safe and people are good will always elicit that response
Because it
from
will give
people
that
around
response.
them. Exactly.
Yeah, they say that the energy that you give out is what you receive.
Yeah.
Law of attraction, manifestation is exactly that.
Yeah.
So the kind of belief system that you are raised with is so important, because that is what eventually you're going to attract. If you've learned that love in a certain way, so we all know love how it is,
Yeah.
but we all understand it very differently.
Yeah.
A person who is coming from a very fulfilled family understands it very differently than a person who is not coming from a fulfilled background.
Right.
Eventually they both go out in the world seeking for love or giving love, so the way they give love is also very different.
Absolutely.
A person who is coming from a background which is very fulfilling, where they don't have to be cautious with love,
Yeah.
they will give it like that and probably receive it like that. And I'm not
Absolutely.
saying that they will not have heartbreaks and they'll not have negative experiences coming their way, but their response with it and their dealing with it will be very different than a person who is coming from a way where they have always behaved with a lot of caution, because they have seen that coming from their home to them.
Right.
And once they go out in the world, they behave with that much more caution and calculation, so that is what they are eventually going to attract.
Absolutely. The way that your parents loved you and the way that you loved them also forms a template of what is familiar for you.
What is familiar for you in terms of love, that emotion.
Exactly. What is familiar for you in terms of love, and that is what you seek everywhere in the world. For example, if you had a parent who gave you a little bit of attention and love, and then they abused you, right? But when you were feeling unsafe and they were abusing you, they went back
To
and
giving
then
you a little bit of
yeah,
love.
and then they give you a little bit of more love, right? So what happens is you get attached to them in a certain way, and that becomes your template of love.
Because you're
Right.
familiar with that now.
You're familiar with that pain of being abused a little bit and loved a little bit, and
You start
that is
accepting that is a part of the process.
yeah. I mean, you feel that is something that feels like home. Even if that's toxic, it feels like home. It doesn't feel safe, but it feels like home. And generally, when people are looking for love, they don't find healthy relationships a lot, because when we look for love, we don't look for safety. We look for what is familiar, what feels like home. So a lot of times we end up in toxic relationships and abusive relationships because those feel like home. They are what are familiar to us. It's a familiar pain. Whereas something that is a healthy relationship, that is not very bad for you and feels safe, it might feel uncomfortable for you because it doesn't feel like home. It's unfamiliar. It's uncomfortable.
You said it very well that what is not familiar to you, that you will not accept as love then. A is that, and about toxic relationships, like you said, that even if the relationship is a little toxic, but it is giving you that dose of comfort that is making you feel a little bit safe also at times. You start feeling that this is how a relationship should look like, and that is what your relationship with love or a future partner has become like.
Yeah.
Right? And our belief also gets reinforced with our own experiences, the experience that we have lived and the experiences that we are right now living. If we share about it with someone, and we tell them that he shouted on me, or he was aggressive in this manner, or whatever happened, then others also say, yeah, especially your parents, if they are like that, they'll say it's okay, it happens. Then you get reinforced in that thought that maybe I am overreacting, and you spend some time in denial also. I want to talk about toxic relationships in depth with you. A, what is a toxic relationship? And B, when two people are together, they will experience different emotions, and all the emotions at different point in times. Now, how do you not label one particular reaction from a person as a red flag and completely discard them? Because you could be having a lesser threshold, or you could be a sensitive person, or it could be actually a red flag. How do you know the difference between the two?
I think you can answer the fact that a relationship is toxic or not by just, if you want to plainly do it broadly, by just two questions. One, are you feeling safe? And two, is it helping you grow? Right? Any relationship that is healthy, it always makes you feel safe. It makes you feel free. Right? You can do anything, you can be anything, you can go anywhere you want to. And not only that, the second point is it will help you grow. It will support you, it will give you energy,
Not
it will
drain you of
nurture
energy.
you instead of draining you of energy. Right? So, coming to your second question, if for example everybody is human and everybody gets angry, but the difference between labeling that as a red flag and understanding that they're just a human is by answering your question whether this person stops my growth, whether this person is open to communicating for the sake of our growth and for the sake of their growth and my growth and this relationship's growth, right? For example, a person who gets angry, and they get angry at you and they thrash you and they just move away. And when you want to talk to them about it, they completely deny that. They probably say that they were not angry, or they dismiss your reality and they say that you made me feel angry and that is why I'm feeling angry. So they're completely dismissing your reality of they got angry and not the fact that you made them feel angry, right? That is not helping you grow. It's not helping that person grow, and it is not helping your relationship grow. Versus person number 2 who got angry, and after they were calm, you talked to them about it and you said that you got angry and that made me feel really unsafe. Is it something that's a normal response for you? Are you an aggressive person? And they reflect on their behavior and they say, it's definitely not something that you did, or maybe it was something that you did, but it made me feel this, and I did not know any other way to respond to it, and I got really afraid, so I got angry at you. I will make sure I'll never do it again. Or even if they have the intention of growing into the person who will not do it again, they show proof by action. You know that that person is willing to grow, you're willing to grow, and this relationship is growing. So you can always differentiate between red flags and a person just being human by asking yourself the question of whether this relationship is growing.
Yeah, these days it has become so common for us to very rampantly label the people. And that's why I think is a probable reason of so many breakups, because you say, oh, I saw this red flag. Oh, I've read this on internet. There are these 10 red flags, or these are these 5 ways to express love. This is not happening. That is not happening. This is my red flag. So red flag number 1, check. So
Yeah.
boyfriend number 1, breakup. 2, breakup. 3, breakup. 4, breakup. And then you enter a middle age of 35, 40 and you are absolutely alone and you're like, I'm not compatible with anyone.
Yes.
So if you are a person who is seeking for companionship, and I'm not saying that everybody will, there are some people who just are okay with how their reality is and they just want to be with themselves. But when you're actually saying and believing in your head that you want to seek for companionship, then you also have to show up differently. You also have to stand for your own growth. The growth that you talked about, the relationship and the partner and that whole ecosystem has to bring, it has to be very personally brought up also.
Yeah.
As a concept, personally
Yeah.
nourished and nurtured also, so that you can bring it for yourself when you are in a relationship ecosystem. You can bring it for the other person also.
Yeah.
Instead of just asking again the outside in,
Yeah.
what are you bringing to me, then what am I also bringing to this? And deep reflection is required there also.
Absolutely. I mean, casually, throwing the terms like red flags at general human behaviors is not cool. I mean, even for the young Gen
Yeah.
Z, it's not cool because there's a child who just you just touch their belly or something like that, and they throw a fit, right? And they throw a fit and they thrash everything. Do you call that a red flag? You don't call that a red flag, right? But when a person who's like much older and you call them out for you have weird hair today and they get really angry, you call that a red flag. But what we don't realize in that person, when a lot of people, even when we grow up, not just a lot of people, every one of us, when we grow up, when we get angry, our brain goes back to the child sort of brain, right? What you have to learn is that first of all, whether that anger affects you at all or not. You don't have to take all anger episodes of a person personally, right? They were not about you, right? If they do not affect you negatively, if they were not about you, if they are just angry
Venting
by
it out.
themselves,
Yeah.
just let them be angry for a while, right? You don't stop them for
We've started labeling these emotions negative, and that is where a lot of problem is also
Yeah.
coming from.
Right,
Because
nobody
you're
can be perfect.
discarding all the negativity.
Exactly,
So you end up
you-
discarding everything and everybody.
that is toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Calling emotions negative, taking
Yeah.
everything personally, and wanting everybody to think positive, be positive all the time. And
I, me, myself.
Yes.
I know what's the best for me.
right.
This I mindset is also not quite healthy.
So, like me and my fiance, what we do is that it's a very, very relieving thing we do. If one of us is really upset or really angry, we don't try to make the other one happy. We ask, for example, if he is angry or he is upset, I will ask, can I do something about it? And if he says no, and I will literally not do anything about it. I will just be there. I'll be in his presence. I'll let him be upset and be angry for a while. And he'll feel better afterwards. If I just try to make him laugh or, do this, do that, he will not. Everybody has a right to be upset, right? And that is something I really love. Because since I was a child and I used to get upset, my mom used to say, why are you upset? Be happy. And I felt like I was never given the right to be irritated, upset, or frustrated, even though I always was irritated and frustrated. But I feel like never had the right to be. It never felt safe.
Yeah, if we could learn to stay with our upsetness and
Yeah.
anger instead of just reacting or eliciting a response,
Yeah.
which is of care or which is of whatever.
Yeah.
If we don't engage with any of that and just sit with the upset, I think that is also
Imagine if we
healing
took it
in a lot of
personally.
ways.
Imagine if we took my anger personally and started saying that, oh, you're angry because of me. Did I do something? Or did I make you upset? You're always angry around me. I just come from work. Don't show your anger around me. Then that would have been a red flag on my part and on his part as well. But he just let me be me and I let him be him. And we got over it together.
Yeah.
He didn't have to take it personally and I didn't have to impose my anger on him.
I'm
So-
happy to know that you have built what works for you.
Yeah.
And this beautiful way of resolving conflicts and dealing with anger. Because I think when we say couples have compatibility issues and that's why it's not working out, it's usually these issues.
Yeah.
Managing each other anger, managing or behaving around each other when they are going through an up and down of emotional outbursts and all of
Yeah.
that. If you can figure out a way to deal with that, there could be some 3 4 5 template ways that the internet will tell you, but there are a lot of interpersonal ways and intrapersonal ways that one can form by effective communication with their partner that works for them. That's a strange thing that works for strange people.
Absolutely.
Sometimes for someone, ordering a meal for your partner will work like, oh, my mood is certainly, I'm not angry anymore.
Yeah.
So different thing works for different people. So you have to identify that resolution technique for yourself and then go forward.
There is nothing you can't work past if you're willing to communicate honestly. Even if it is just a simple fact that I was angry at you because I fear losing you. So difficult for us to say that, right? To another person, we feel like we'll become less or something if we say that we fear losing that person, and that's why we are angry. When you build that honest communication, it also has to be honest talking about stuff and honest listening of the stuff and honest empathizing with the other person. You actually put yourself in their shoes. You don't do it for the sake of it. You actually do it.
What I feel in most of the relationships, willingness to listen to your partner is also important in that process. Because even if they say something in anger or in a way which is not very acceptable to healthy communication, then also there is some element of truth in that comment.
No, actually, I disagree with
You
that.
disagree?
Yeah. Because when you're angry, when you have had alcohol, when you have not slept enough, your cognition is not working as well as it should. So you also don't recognize your real beliefs and thoughts. You don't know why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, right? Because your brain has gone back to a very primitive brain. And that brain does not work in the best possible way. So when a child says that I hate you, mommy, when they're angry, they don't mean that they hate their mommy. In the same way, when a person is really upset or they haven't slept or they've had alcohol and they say you're the worst person I've come across, they don't mean it. You don't have to take it personally. There might not be any truth to it. The important part comes later when you're both well slept, you've not had any alcohol, and you're both in your straight minds, and you are willing to have a conversation about what they talked about. And then they can tell you why they got angry or why they were upset or why...
No, what I was talking about, very trivial issues that happen between a couple. Let's say a very common fight that happens between a couple is when they have to go out somewhere. Either the guy or the girl takes little extra time in dressing up, which they don't accept. When you say, oh, you take always extra time. Oh, you take more than me. So that is a constant. Like these things, now there is always an element of truth where you have to really accept that, yeah, I took longer.
Yeah.
I said 5 minutes, but I actually took half an hour.
Yeah.
Those kind of things I was talking about because these are the everyday basis, things happening. Where you say, okay, I'll not eat, but you end up then asking for food later.
Yeah.
And I am not prepared for it. And that is then an issue. So the everyday, these issues, not these hurtful statements which are said in some other state of mind, which is an influenced state of mind or intoxicated state of mind. That's a different thing. Not the harsh things like I hate you and all of that, but these general fights which have some sort of a feedback in them that, I don't like this or this made me feel like that. Or sometimes you say, oh, you drive fast. And somebody, I'm safe, I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
I'll tell you why that happens.
There's also truth to it. That
I'll tell you why that happens. It's the fact that when you give feedback or if you're telling someone something, it greatly depends on how you phrase it, whether that person is going to get defensive or not.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. It's because every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if someone pushes me, my body gets tense and it pushes back a little bit, right? So if you're giving someone feedback by pointing out their character or you're doing it in a manner that's attacking them, they will get defensive. Instead, even the small statement where you said that you drive fast, you can just say, you drive fast talks about the character as a whole, not the action.
Not the action.
Right? Talking about the character is attack.
Yeah.
A person can't change their character. They can change their action. So what you can say instead is, can you please not drive fast right now? because it makes me feel afraid. You tell them why you're giving them feedback. It's not because you want to attack them. You want to give them feedback. It's you're telling them how you're feeling, and you don't have to take it personally. It's my problem, but can you please do this? So when you teach a person how to talk to them, or when you phrase your sentence in a manner that does not make the other person feel defensive, they will likely not get defensive. Nobody wants fights for no reason. People all want peace. I hope.
I really hope so too, because so many things are layered in this conversation, especially when we come to relationships arena. It's a very layered subject.
Yeah.
Like I said, and like you're saying, that one thing and one action will not lead to only one outcome.
Yeah.
The same action I will do in my relationship, the same action you will do in your relationship, and will be two completely different
Yeah.
outcomes. So it's a very layered subject. So to speak about it also, the way we are talking, we are completely bearing ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
This is as real as it gets. When there's no camera, then also we talk like this, right?
Yeah.
So it's a communication as real as it gets. So I really would encourage my viewers also to see it as that,
Yeah.
you know, and instead of judging, just try to see what works for you. Because it's a very
Right.
layered subject.
Absolutely.
You know, again, depends. A threshold of somebody acting defensive is also very individual.
Absolutely.
You know, maybe when you said it like that, he had the patience to teach it to you like that, or maybe when you say it like that, it translates in a manner that it's not an attack to me.
Right.
Sometimes when that thing is said repeatedly, for some people it again feels like an attack. So it's a very independent, individual related
I
dynamics.
agree. When you're ready to be vulnerable, it becomes 10 times easier for the person in front of you to become vulnerable. So when you say that can you please do this because I'm feeling this, it's very easy for them to say, I can't do this because I feel this. So they still get defensive, but they give you the reason for it. And that makes you understand why they are getting defensive.
Every story has so much to teach us if we
Right.
just learn to be present with that story, be involved in the story, and just learn and grow from there.
Yeah.
So, beautiful perspective on relationships. Whatever we are doing here at the Journey Within podcast is also just trying to create a shift in the perspective where the concepts, the situations, the circumstances might just remain the same for you in life, because that is not in your control. That nobody else can change for you. Your reality will be your reality. When the perspective shifts towards it, a lot of action can happen. A lot of relationship with your mental health and emotional health can be restored. Just changing this perspective. So that is what we're trying to do here with these conversations. And thank you for bringing in your perspective, because once you talk to enough people, you see there are so many ways to look at one simple thing. And any of these ways you can take to take that action, whatever works for you. Once you're clear about your goal, and once you're very clear about why you want to pursue what you want to pursue, if it is coming from a very deep connection with your own inner self, then you will find ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very clear, there's a very, very clear connection between your habits and your actions and your identity, right? So think of it as a circle, right? Your actions decide what your identity is. For example, like you said, if you want to take examples from the physical, from your physical health, if I exercise every day, I will identify as a fit person, right? If I eat healthy every day, I will identify as a fit person. If I read every day, I will identify as a reader. Now, if I identify as a reader, it will automatically motivate me to read every day. Because I am a reader. I read every day. I am a fit person. I have to exercise, right? So basically, your actions dictate your identity, and your identity in turn dictate your actions. So there's a simple thing that you can do if you want to build good habits, and if you want to take better actions. Make it a part of your identity. And how do you make it a part of your identity? By doing something repeatedly. Read a book for 20 days and call yourself a reader. It will automatically translate into your actions and your habits. Something that you deeply identify as is something that you cannot go without doing another day. So it's a circle that we can take advantage of every day of our lives.
Habit formation is a surefire way to fuel your goals. And if your goals make you feel good enough, if you're deeply connected with your goal, they eventually become a part of your identity.
I feel like the most underrated way to have good mental health or have good physical health is habits. And I would like to use another word for it, and it's called protocols, right? So, as adults, we have to make a lot of decisions every day. If I want to be a person who is aware of my life, who has good mental health, has good physical health, I have to take at least 20 actions in a day that require a decision. Starting from the morning, my decision is, should I wake up early in the morning or should I keep sleeping? Should I go to the gym or should I not go to the gym? Right? There are at least 20 decisions you will take in a day. And if you have to take those decisions every day, it will exhaust you.
That is decision
Just-
fatigue.
You're right. So you wake up in the morning, you decide whether I want to sleep or whether I want to wake up. Okay, I'll wake up. You wake up, and then you can't take the next decision of going to the gym. You think, okay, I'll go to the gym, and then you push yourself and you go to the gym, and then you come back. You don't want to cook a meal for yourself. Compare that with waking up and brushing your teeth. Does that take any effort? It does not take any effort because you've been doing it every day. You don't have to take the decision of brushing your teeth. And how is that helped? It's helped with protocols. So slowly, one action leads to another action to a third. You start with just building one action every day. Build another action on top of it every day. For example, you start with just waking up early. You do it for a few days and then you build on top of it by exercising every day, and you build on top of it. Then eating healthy. This will take at least 7 to 8 months, but you will have built a protocol. Now, after doing all of these things, or even just one thing for 1 month or 2 months, it will not take any effort for you to think कि मुझे जल्दी उठना है कि नहीं. I'm calling it a protocol, but generally people call it a routine. People think that routines are boring. And if you have a routine, you have to be disciplined. And to be disciplined, you can't have any free time to do whatever you want. But you will be surprised at the amount of free time you have and the energy you have when you actually have a routine or a protocol.
Yeah.
Because you're taking care of everything that you really want to take care of, and then there's a lot of time for you to do whatever you want.
And you're not also constantly in the decision fatigue mindset.
Exactly.
Because if you're constantly battling with this question that should I wake up or not, you're just battling with it every day.
Right.
Once it becomes a part of your protocol or your habit, then that question is off charts for you. Then the
Yeah.
next questions. Like that, you keep striking off these decisions that you have to wake up every day. Now, I want to come towards the closure of this podcast episode. A question that I always keep it for the end for my guest is their definition of success. You know, we have talked about physical realm of our being. We've talked about emotional and mental body. We've talked about mental health, trauma, therapy, our relationships. Everything is going on in this life for us. And we are working in multiple domains every single day of our life. And somewhere we are getting exhausted. Somewhere we are becoming more passionate, you know. Out of all of this clutter and chaos and clarity around us, what is your definition of success?
My definition of success is very simple. My definition of success is having really healthy relationships, right? And always growing. I've felt successful a lot of times in my life before, and the only time that I don't feel very successful is when I'm not growing, right? So I know that if I am growing, I'm working on myself and working on my growth, be it in any direction, right? I could be just growing in my relationships, or just growing in my career, or just growing in terms of my finances. If just in one of those areas I am working on myself, I call it success.
Beautifully said, Princy. Thank you
you.
for joining me on the Journey Within podcast, sharing your perspective, your knowledge, your wisdom, and normalizing the conversations about mental health through your platform, which is Get Me Therapy. And I encourage my viewers to check out your page.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Shobha. It was great being here. Thank you for having me. Hi, I'm Princy, the co-founder of Get Me Therapy on the Journey Within podcast, and it has been a beautiful, fascinating, insightful experience. Thank you so much, Shobha, for having us here. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow for more.
Thank you for watching the episode. Please let us know what is it that you have learned through this episode in the comment section, and what is it that you would like to talk about, or what are your questions. We'll try to address them in our future episodes. Thank you so much once again. Please do subscribe to the channel, like, comment and share, and help us reach a wider audience.